They say that the universe will only give you what you can handle. I think that is a complete lie. Sometimes the universe piles so much grief, debt, and desperation onto your shoulders that it forces you to your knees just to see if you have the strength to crawl. My name is Mariana. I am 34 years old, and a year ago I was completely and utterly broken. My husband, Raphael, was the love of my life. He was a master baker. Every morning at 3 a.m., he would wake up in the freezing cold, go down to the bakery attached to our tiny house, and start the wood-fired oven. He wasn't a man of many words, but the smell of his fresh bread at dawn was how he told the entire town that he loved them. But 8 months ago, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Raphael was driving his truck to the city to buy flour. A commercial trailer lost its brakes on a curve and crushed his truck completely. He was gone instantly. He didn't say goodbye. He just vanished from our lives, leaving me entirely alone with an 8-year-old son, a 5-year-old daughter, and a crushing, terrifying amount of debt. See, right before he died, Raphael had taken out a massive loan to buy a new industrial oven. Without him, I couldn't pay it. I tried to bake his bread. God knows I tried. Every single night, I would stand in front of that oven, covered in flour, trying to recreate his recipes. But Raphael kept his recipes in his head and in his hands. Every batch I made came out heavy, burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. Within 2 months, our customers completely stopped coming. I was drowning. I had $10,000 in debt, the bank was threatening to foreclose on our home, and my children were eating plain rice for dinner. Then came the night that changed the trajectory of my entire existence. It was a freezing torrential October downpour. I had spent my last few dollars on a single pitiful sack of flour. I was walking home in the dark, soaking wet, shivering violently, holding the flour to my chest so it wouldn't ruin. I had 20 minutes of walking left. I was so tired, I just wanted to close my eyes and give up. But as I walked past the old abandoned bus stop on the edge of town, I saw them. Sitting on a cold concrete bench, huddled together under the leaking tin roof, were 2 elderly people. The man was easily in his 80s, wearing a threadbare coat that was soaking wet. The woman, trembling uncontrollably, had her head resting on his shoulder, wrapped in a thin, useless shawl. Between their feet in the mud was a single cardboard suitcase tied together with cheap rope. Just 2 fragile old people, a cardboard box, and the merciless rain. I stopped. I had no money. I barely had food for my own children. The logical thing to do was to keep walking. But I looked at them and I thought of Raphael. If Raphael were alive, he would never leave them out here to freeze. I wiped the rain from my eyes, walked up to the bench and said, "There are no more buses tonight. You will freeze to death out here." The old man looked up at me. He had the kindest, most tired eyes I had ever seen. He forced a polite smile and said, "We are used to the cold, my child. We will be fine." That broke me. I didn't even think. "Pick up your bag," I ordered gently. "My house is small and I don't have much to offer, but it has a dry roof. You are coming with me." They tried to refuse, saying they didn't want to be a burden, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. We walked through the mud, the old woman clinging to my arm. When we got home, I gave them dry blankets and split our tiny portion of beans and tortillas into 5 plates instead of 3. The old man introduced himself as Gennaro, and his wife was Attilia. They had been married for 54 years. They ate slowly, heads down, with the quiet dignity of people who have lost everything. I set up a mattress in the storage room for them, locked up the house, and went down to the bakery at 3 a.m. to fight with the dough again, crying out of pure exhaustion. But when I walked into the bakery, Don Gennaro was already there. He was standing in front of the cold oven, his eyes closed, taking a deep breath of the flour-dusted air. "I haven't smelled a bakery at dawn in a very long time," he whispered. He looked at the disastrous, heavy dough I had prepared. He didn't criticize me. He just slowly rolled up his sleeves, washed his frail, trembling hands, and walked over to the wooden counter. "The dough doesn't need to be rushed, Mariana," he said softly. "Bread is about patience." For the next 3 hours, I watched a miracle happen. This fragile, homeless 80-year-old man worked the dough with a rhythm and a grace that was entirely mesmerizing. He knew exactly how much water to add. He knew exactly how hot the oven should be just by holding his palm near the bricks. At 6 a.m., he pulled the first tray out of the oven. The smell hit me like a physical blow. It was perfect. It was golden, fluffy, and absolutely divine. It smelled exactly, and I mean exactly, like Raphael's bread. I fell to my knees in the middle of the bakery and just sobbed. Otilia came in, wrapped her arms around me, and let me cry. That morning, we sold out of every single loaf before 9 a.m. Gennaro and Otilia didn't leave that day. Or the next. They became the grandparents my children never had. Gennaro taught me the true art of baking, saving my business, and Otilia braided my daughter's hair and helped my son with his homework. Within 3 months, the bakery was thriving so much that I finally went to the bank and paid off the $10,000 debt in full. We were a family, but I still didn't know why two incredible, loving people had been left on the streets to die. One evening, I sat them down in the kitchen. I looked Gennaro in the eyes and asked him what happened. Otilia looked away, tears pooling in her eyes, and Gennaro finally told me the truth. For 50 years, they had owned one of the most famous bakeries in a town on the other side of the mountains. They had taken in an orphan nephew named Fabian when he was just a child. They raised Fabian as their own son, gave him their love, and eventually entrusted him with the legal management of their massive bakery. And Fabian betrayed them. Over the course of 3 years, Fabian secretly forged documents, took out fraudulent loans against the property, and legally transferred the deed of their multi-million-dollar bakery into his own name. Once the ink was dry, Fabian's wife complained that the old couple was annoying. So Fabian packed their clothes into a cardboard suitcase, drove them to a bus station in the middle of nowhere, handed them $20, and abandoned them. A cold, dark fury ignited inside my chest. They had saved my family, and this arrogant, ungrateful monster had thrown them away like garbage. But then something happened that completely altered reality. I invited them into our small living room to show them something. On the wall was a large framed photograph of Raphael when he was 19, standing proudly in an apron. Gennaro stopped dead in his tracks, the color completely drained from his face. He started shaking so violently he had to hold on to a chair. Where did you get this picture? He choked out. That is my late husband, I said gently. Raphael. Otilia gasped and covered her mouth with both hands, bursting into tears. Gennaro looked at me, his eyes wide with shock. Mariana, 30 years ago, a starving, abused 16-year-old boy ran away from home and showed up at the back door of our bakery. We took him in. I taught him everything I knew about baking. I gave him all my recipes. 3 years later, he left to start his own life. His name was Raphael. The room went completely silent. The universe hadn't just sent me 2 random homeless people. The universe had sent me the exact people who had saved my husband's life 30 years ago. The recipes Gennaro was using to save my bakery were the exact same recipes Raphael had used to build it. They were the architects of my entire life, and I hadn't even known it. I am not a violent person. But when I realized who they were, I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't tell Gennaro or Otilia my plan. I took the massive profits we were now making from the bakery, and I hired the most ruthless, aggressive corporate fraud lawyer in the city. We didn't just ask nicely. We launched a massive, devastating legal investigation into Fabian. We subpoenaed the bank records, the loan agreements, and the forged signatures. It turns out, Fabian wasn't just a bad son, he was an idiot. He had forged Gennaro's signature on a loan document on a date when Gennaro was physically admitted to a hospital for cataract surgery. We had the medical records to prove he couldn't have possibly signed it. I didn't give Fabian a warning. We filed a federal injunction, freezing all of his assets, freezing the bakery's bank accounts, and invalidating the deed transfer due to explicit, proven felony fraud. Within 2 weeks, Fabian's entire world collapsed. His wife left him the second the bank accounts were frozen. The town found out what he did, and no one would buy a single loaf of bread from him. The local authorities gave him a choice: surrender the property back to Gennaro unconditionally, or face 20 years in state prison for elder abuse and wire fraud. He surrendered the property. He packed a single bag and left town, absolutely penniless, hated by everyone, and utterly alone. Exactly the way he had left Gennaro and Otilia. We didn't move back to that town. Gennaro and Otilia belonged here with their grandchildren. Instead, we turned their massive reclaimed bakery into a free training school for orphans and struggling youths. We hired managers to run it, and every single penny of profit goes to funding the school. Gennaro and Otilia lived their final years surrounded by immense love, warmth, and laughter. They passed away peacefully in their sleep, just a few months apart. Sometimes the good you put into the world doesn't just disappear. Sometimes it travels through time, across mountains, and waits until the exact moment you are breaking under the rain to come back and hold an umbrella over your head. What do you guys think? Did Fabian deserve a harsher punishment, or is living the rest of his life as a hated, penniless outcast the ultimate karma? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more unbelievable stories.